when our own souls are a collective? There's got a soul mind, a soul heart. The soul has emotions too. How do we get from the I to the we of soul so that we bring all of us to earth to play, and to handle with our everyday lives and stuff, so that we don't walk around frightened by what happens in the outside world because it seems strange to us, rather than really knowing who we are, so we don't project it onto other people and think if we're other to ourselves, because there's so much unknown. It's a lot of shadow work. We then project it onto others, and all our own fears are externalized. So the first thing we have to do to feel safe in any world, no matter what's going on, is we have to know ourselves. We have to know our own souls. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
So I want to know more about emotions of the soul. Does the soul have the same emotions that we all have as the I, the ego?
No,
or what emotions?
No.
Tell us.
The soul has common senses. Their senses, their emotions are always with the good of all, including the one. But it's where the I meets the I am. And therefore, if you can help communicate with your soul can give you a wider vision. And what we have to learn is enough about our soul to be able to feel and still have compassion as humans in our own emotional body, but also to be able to see like eagle vision. So we need to live in both mouse vision as humans and be able to call to us eagle vision when we need it.
Oh, I like that. Mouse vision and eagle vision. All right, I want to get into more about how we actually talk to the soul, but I want to bring you and Carol B. And what are your thoughts either on what Carol said or connection to self?
Okay, so I believe like connection with self is the starting point of everything. However, I think in order for us to be connected to ourselves, we need to realize that we don't like ourselves very much. And I think a lot of the time we don't realize that we don't like ourselves because we have been numbing ourselves with so much of, social media, other addictions. There's like porn, there's food and all this other stuff. So if you're really constantly numbing yourself and you don't even realize that you hate yourself, how can you be connected? Why would you even want to spend time with yourself? So essentially, I think what comes in regards to being able to connect with yourself is to having that awareness of where you live. And in order to have that awareness of where you live, you really, I kind of throw out that exercise, like, people are like, don't make people focus on negative shit. It's just, we're in a positive thought kind of industry. But no, again, that's the problem of where we turn towards external factors rather than, again, from the episode 1, we have to face internally. So we need to be aware of where we live. So I would say journal for a week, every single day, and write down all the thoughts that come to your head about like how much you hate yourself, right? And so if you realize all the stuff that you hate about yourself, guess what? Like, holy shit, that's where you live. And when you realize that's how much you hate yourself, guess what? You created that, and you can create another way of seeing yourself. So you can flip that script and be like, you know what? That's enough of me hating myself. Let me now start loving myself. And when you start loving yourself, then you can start being connected to yourself because you're making yourself a study. You know what I mean? What makes myself tick? What do I like? What I don't like? And the thing is, this connected to self and being completely honest with the self that you don't like yourself and where you are today, that's the only way you're going to get from that point A to B, connection to self and connection to soul. But the only ways you can get that amazing relationship with other people is to be honest with yourself and where you stand today, and then you're going to be able to have honest relationships with other people. And that is a starting point, because I don't think if you can't get to that awareness of where you live today, of like you don't like yourself, and then switch that and start loving yourself, then how are you going to be open to the soul? How are you going to be open to that connectedness? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Carol, I do agree. I absolutely do agree that in order to understand yourself, you also have to do a lot of shadow work, because you've got to understand the parts of yourself that you've rejected because of either societal or parental or whatever pressures. I didn't ever come at it from not liking myself. So I think there's a place for both. For any of us who want to know all of who we are, we have to sort of own the fact that all human beings have both shadow and light. We are sometimes as reluctant to own our light as we are our shadow. But there should be no judgment, because all of us have it. And once we can accept it in ourselves, the great part is then we look outside and we say, oh, that's shadow. Oh, but you're right. We have to learn to love ourselves, certainly.
Because it's a development, right? It's almost like sometimes people want to, we live in a microwave society, so we want to kind of get that change right away. But however, that's a whole development process. Things take time. If you've been living in this space for how many years, sometimes you cannot get that instant change or that transformation. Maybe you get that awareness and then changes to right direction. But it's like you can't build that muscle without putting in the reps, right? And the thing is, a lot of the time too, the people who are listening and watching, you know what I mean? We have been filled with so much programming. So just with any kind of computer program, we need an update. And the Souldemic is that update to kind of really rediscover the connection with ourselves. And then, that ability to have the connection to the soul in all different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to jump in here because, Carol G, I think you highlight something that is tremendously important. And it's the idea of we have to recognize our light as well. And it seems like in this self-help, self-development world, whatever you want to call this thing, there's a group that says it's all about, positivity, and you change your thoughts and think positive and life's going to be great. And then there's the other side that says, well, you need to recognize all the crap that's inside of you and all this junk, and you hate yourself and you're talking mean to yourself and all that. And the truth is, it's both. If you just do one, you're not going to get there. So if you want to journal, like Carol B says, okay, journal, make a list of everything you hate about yourself. And we all, I don't care how positive you are, there are things about yourself that you don't love, that you'd rather be a little different. We all have it. And make it as long as it needs to be. Don't edit it. And then make a list of everything that you like or love about yourself, because no matter how down in the gutters you are, we all have something. If we really think about it, now we may have masked it up, but if we really think about it, we go, oh yeah, I kind of like that about myself. Either something that we do, or a good person, maybe we do some volunteer stuff, or, we're miserable, but we like our smile or our eyes. There's always something. Or that your knees work, you can still walk across the room. Just, no one really cares about their pinky toe until they hurt it.
Right.
Hurt it, they realize that they can't even walk. Because that little pinky toe is such an important part of the body. Without your pinky toe, you start limping around. So make that list of everything that's good, everything is working. And then, then you have to bring them both in and hold them both. Hold the parts that frustrate you or you hate. If you want to go there, that's fine. Hold the places that you love about yourself. And that's the beginning of connection to you. From there, then we can start really speaking to the soul itself.
Well, one of the things, both of you, I absolutely agree on that. What I think part of my focus for me at this time, part of my passion, is that so much of what we've called enlightenment, like Carol said last week, well, she's a spirit having a human experience, so let's have it. And like Jonathan says, let's really look at all of it. My concern now is that so many of those who have privilege to search for enlightenment, if you will, do harm with that manifest your own reality stuff, because there's an inherent judgment in the fact that if their idea of success and our idea of success is different, then somehow they're not manifesting it properly. I'm concerned that we help people know their souls, but not judge them for the lives they live. That because we're all learning something. We've all been here a lot of times. We all come from the same source. And so as soon as we can start being kinder to ourselves, we can also then start being kinder to each other, because the best thing, you know how I learned to drop judgments? By really looking at all my own mistakes. When I looked at what a dope I was sometimes, I thought, oh crap, my intention was so good. I was such a dope. So if somebody else does something that's really weird, I think, oh well, they're going through their dopey moment, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it helps us connect on certain levels, you know.
Judgment is big. You know, if you go through the program that I have, Self-Love Revolution, the judge is one of the 13 saboteurs. And you're right. We're just filled. We are programmed to judge everything. Judge good or bad, everything we see. I like that color of that wall. I don't like that color of that wall. You know, to the TV show, to the meal, everything is an immediate judgment. And we're, you know, they tell us, you know, you're judged within the first, you know, second you meet someone. But the real thing is we are taught then to judge someone in that first second we meet them. And we don't have to. And the thing about that is there's a book out there called Beginner's Mind. And I'll be honest, I have not read the book. It is on my shelf, but I just love looking at the title. I love looking at the title because every time I just see Beginner's Mind, it reminds me that, well, one, I came from a place. So why am I going to judge that person that is where I was 10 and 20 years ago? Beating myself up, you know, success on paper, but a mess in my head, you know, so here I am. Well, why don't they just get it?
Carol.
Why didn't I get it?
Yeah.
You know, so we have to remember where we were 10, 20, 30, however many years ago, and have compassion for those that are on whatever part of the journey they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I know Mario always used to say, whenever you look at anybody, you have to understand that they're all fighting a fierce battle, and they're fighting it as hard as they can. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think to honor each other's journey is something, to acknowledge our shadow. Somebody just asked a question that said, how do you know when you're honoring your own shadow or whether it's somebody else's shadow that you've picked up? Carol, I think that's sort of a good question for you. You know, how do you know where you're empathically picking up somebody else's?
Well, I think essentially that goes back to knowing yourself. So when you really know yourself and you really know like what resonates with you, then you can really kind of dissect, you know, what's someone else's and with yours. Because me myself being a sensitive empath, I kind of take on a lot of people's energy. So when I'm meeting with clients and certain stuff, like, you know, sometimes I come in, I'm like, I'm in an amazing mood, and all of a sudden, like, I get really funky, right? And I'm like, oh shit, that's not me, that's someone else's, right? And so when you're able to have that distinction, then you know, okay, that's their garbage. But at the same time, Carol G and Gino taught us this amazing exercise. You have to really be able to protect yourself. So kind of put yourself in that protective bubble, that red number one, you know, put yourself in a red bubble, and then kind of put that in that bubble and encompass another, you know, illuminating bubble, so you can protect yourself. However, that only happens when you're aware and in tune with yourself. And always ask yourself that question. You can even ask yourself that question, because we are already intuitive beings, and sometimes we don't listen to our intentions, right? Or our intuition to be like, you know, is this my shit or this is someone else's? I'm like, oh my God, that's Bob and Sally's shit. That's not mine.
Yeah.
Ask yourself questions, because then you'll be derived with the right answers. And I think a lot of the time we just kind of go with things instead of questioning. So questioning is really important.
Yeah, questioning is important, because even in a relationship between your physical body and your soul, you've got to know your body has a voice, your body has needs, your soul has a vision of something that's higher possibly than yours. So it takes time to know all these aspects of yourself. And once you start to learn what an adventure it is, you really find out that we're all on a hero's journey. We just have to look at our journey, own it, claim it, and then play it full out. You can't play it full out if you haven't owned 2/3 of who you are, because 2/3 is unseen. You've got to make that connection with yourself. And that way, once we get to that level, we look at each other and we say, hey, I know you. We allow for synchronicities. We allow for just amazing miracles. We allow for ourselves to fall and hit our nose and think, what is this about? You know, but knowing my soul really has helped in the real world. Practically, it has a lot of practical value. It helped me when I had cancer. It helped me when I had a stroke. It helped me when I bumped into a burglar in the middle of the night. I mean, it's such an exciting thing to know that the real you is so much more, and that you can claim that you to help you walk your path in the new world and do it with heart, with fullness, and be all you can be. Then it can certainly incorporate all those things you didn't like about yourself, because some of the darkest aspects of us are the aspects that are our creativity, that have been shoved underground for too long, you know? So I think it's really exciting. It's as exciting as learning about anybody else, so we might as well take the time.
So Carol G, so how do we talk to the soul? How do we ask questions of the soul? How do we get answers? How do we know if it's an answer?
Actually, maybe before we kind of actually, I think what we should do first, instead of maybe talking to the soul, we should explain to people what the soul is, so they understand, because we can't assume that people know what the soul is.
Good. All right. You tell us what the soul is.
Go ahead. You know.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Me.
You got it all. You got it all. Carol G, tell us what the soul is and how we talk to it.
Everybody maybe has a different idea of their own. For me, it's the space. For me, picture two capital I's on top of each other. And one is the greater I, that's connected to spirit. It's between soul and spirit. And the other is the lesser I, which is from soul to physical body mind. Okay? In that middle space where the two capital I's meet, that's your soul. It's timeless. It carries past lives, future lives. It carries instructions from spirit, sort of like your suitcase when spirit sends you down. That's it. And you have all the wisdom of all your lifetimes on that soul level. So you're not only coming to earth with your mission this life, you're coming to earth with everything you learned from past and future. So when you sit and breathe, when you hold your heart and you meditate, when you feel that gut feeling, it's like everything else. A soul talks to you in different ways. Your soul will talk to you in different ways. Mine talks to me in telethought and pictures. I mean, and that happened after the first stroke where they knocked my left brain out, and I had to learn to talk all over again and all that stuff. But what happens is I get a picture and I have to interpret it. And we as human beings have to spend as much time learning how our soul communicates with us. Sometimes it's just that gut feeling that you call intuition, and you know every time you override it with your rational mind, you're wrong. You know, you have to get the tune. Like like if somebody calls you on the phone and they don't say who they are, but they are your friend, you know who they are because you've talked to them for a while. You've got to learn who your soul is. You know, when I started this thing, Carol, at the very beginning, I got it so messed up because I was talking about a psychic reader I was going to go see. And I kept saying to Spirit, tell me about this guy, tell me about this guy. And every place I looked, there was swastikas. And I thought, oh no, I can't do that. I can't see him, I can't. And they kept saying the same thing. I went up to see this reader. And he read me. He got nothing right. Everything was so wrong that on the way home, I was hollering at my spirits again and saying to them, what is that nonsense? A Nazi, he wasn't even underground. He knew nothing. And they said, not Nazi, Notsee, Nazi. So it took me a long time to learn how to interpret some of the stuff that I get. Sometimes it's close. Sometimes, like you say, it's right on the emotional. You get a gut feeling. That's it. That's your soul trying to get in touch with you. The more you contact, the more you feel, the more you know, the more you develop a relationship.
So intuition is a message from the soul.
I believe so. Carol, what would you say your relationship to your soul or spirit is? How do you get your info?
So for me, I just feel that connectedness to that higher power, that higher source, and that there is really no beginning and end to where we're connected. Like we're just fully encompassed with everything. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel when I get like my thoughts and inspirations, sometimes like with you, it's sometimes really challenging to interpret it because they give me certain images, certain things, and you have to make sense of it all. But it doesn't like it's not as clear and it's not as clear as sometimes you would want it to be, but it kind of like you just have to make sense of it. And then when you start like talking, say for instance, I was talking with my girlfriend yesterday, and we're kind of I was getting certain like visions and of where she should go with herself and their business, and they're showing me certain things, and like we had a past life in Atlantis, and then all of a sudden 1560s comes on, and then like in 1560s me and you were in a war together. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? So I look up what happens 1560, and then sure enough, there's a war. So it just kind of, it brings you on this, like such an adventure. But then at the end of the day, it's really all connected. And the story loops back to essentially the main inquiry that they had. So it's really exciting. And at times too, just being connected with people, and even if they're across the world, I'll give you an example. For instance, one of my friends, I was texting him and he was in Brazil, right? And then, he's like, oh, I'm in Brazil. And then that was it, right? And then that whole night I could not sleep. I was tossing and turning because I was feeling all these feelings that he was having, all these different visions that he was going through and everything. And then, and when he came back to Winnipeg, I'm like, I have to meet with you. I have to have dinner with you. And I had to kind of go through all these things that I was going through because it was driving me fucking crazy. And then when I said, okay, this is what I saw, this is what I felt, and like, you have any resonance with what I'm saying? And he's like, that's exactly what I went to Brazil for. So
Yeah.
it's very, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a relationship. You have to learn to trust. You have to learn to interpret. There's so many things. And then you have to really learn to trust the universe enough to follow your gut. Sometimes to let it override your rational mind.
Yeah, but the other thing I want to mention, I think you mentioned this before, Carol, is that everybody has these abilities.
Yes.
To be connected, to have, psychic and clairvoyant abilities. However, I believe the only way that this container, this vessel can get these messages is when you're able to know yourself, and you're able to get rid of all this junk that you've been holding on to your whole life. You know what I mean? So that's like the pain, the regret, the worry, the anger, you know what I mean? When you're able to start releasing that in yourself and becoming lighter, you're more of a clearer vessel. You're more empty, but in a good way, and things can start flowing to you, because everybody gets ideas all the time, insights and all this other stuff. Everybody gets it, but it's almost the people who actually grab that idea are the people that can actually take that idea and put it from inception to completion. You know what I mean? So everybody has these abilities.
Yeah. And I did read scientifically, excuse me, Jonathan, I'm going to forget it otherwise. I did read something the other day that, 80% of our brain is uncharted territory. They don't really know what it does yet and stuff. And I'm sure whoever made us didn't put styrofoam in because it's not recyclable. But I do think now there are new receptors in our brain at this time that we look as physically it's a pandemic, but obviously from an evolutionary point of view, it's a new process to get us upgraded, like you all said. And so in that, what we have to know is we can't judge before we try to practice it. Like when I was in New York, they said, time to go to Texas. I said, Texas? Yes, they said, time to move to Texas. I said, Texas? But I went, and 2 weeks later, I bought a house in Texas, and I moved to Texas. And I love it here, by the way. But it's a whole different place. You have to learn to trust. It takes a couple of years. But man, you're worth it, because if we're all one, as soon as one of us takes out of the collective anything that we judge as not being good for all, we've owned it. And if every one of us takes our piece back, it's not outside of us anymore. We've owned it, we've integrated it, we know its place, and then we can move forward. We'll have a much kinder outside if we can learn to live inside, in our own home, inside. We'll feel safe no matter what the world is doing.
Yeah, I think safe inside here is the key. And to bring this all back down a little bit from soul, or that top eye, to this eye. And by the way, I think you were told to go to Texas just to be closer to me, although I wasn't in Texas then. But somebody knew I was moving to Texas also. But here's the thing, because people are watching this maybe and like, I don't talk to my soul. I don't know how to talk to my soul. And I want to go back to that beginner's mind that, hey, that is okay. And I don't know if I am talking to my soul either. I guess if it's my intuition, I am, and I'm getting those messages, whether I know it or not. But here's the thing. You don't have to start there. You don't have to jump from beating yourself up all day long and feeling disconnected and feeling like the world is just an overwhelm to, I'm going to talk to my soul. You can, there are steps along the path. And one of them is what Gina B was saying, talk to you. Just talk to you. The part of you that you know you. You might not like you. You might like parts of you. Maybe you do like you. All that is okay. But can you just start talking to you? And if you start talking to you, being comfortable with you, becoming safe in this home here, Jonathan, it's okay that you're not perfect. It's okay that you made that mistake. It's okay that you screwed up. And I recognize you did that awesome thing too. That was really good. Then you can begin to be safe in here. And when you get safe in here, the world does become quieter. I know you have to experiment for yourself, right? You can take my word for it, but you just have to do it and go, okay, let me practice a month of being kind to myself. The stuff you like and the stuff you don't like. It gets quieter. And when it gets quieter, yes, you hear your intuition more. Mm-hmm. And if that's the soul, then you're hearing your soul more and you can talk to your soul. But don't think that you immediately have to go out there. You can do a lot of this work here in the space that you know and that you call home.
Well, Jonathan, that is this. We're all connected. Like, we can all look at a sunset, and if it's really beautiful, all of us respond. Why? Because it's talking to a deeper part of us that is us as well. We are sunrises, sunsets, all that other stuff. But there's so much more of us than, you know how many people say, but I don't know why I'm here. Well, there are ways to find out why you're here. There are ways to find your soul purpose. There are ways, but it's an interesting relationship to develop now that so many people are feeling lonely, that so many people are saying, I didn't want to work this hard, and now they're stuck at home with their family. And instead of looking at their part in the chaos, they're again wondering what's wrong with everything outside. This is a wonderful time to look at what pushes your buttons and to start to relate to where all that's coming from. Because a lot of people for a lot of years who were searching for enlightenment went right past their emotional body. And there's no way to really do that, you know? So.
Yeah, because I think there's a good analogy, right? Like, you know, when people are, say, dating, you know, they're dating this individual to what? To get them to know them better, to find out more of their characteristics, qualities, to see if there's a good fit, right? That's the whole dating process. So in order to get connected with yourself, date yourself, you know what I mean? And like the number one step that I mentioned from episode 1 is to sit in silence. So in order to have that conversation with yourself, sit in silence, get to know yourself. And the thing is, when you're sitting in silence, you're kind of doing double duty, because you're listening to yourself and your higher self, your soul. You know what I mean? So it happens simultaneously. But you can first develop that relationship with yourself, date yourself, you know what I mean? And then afterwards, get more committed to that long-term relationship, to getting to know yourself, because it's not just that dating process of yourself. It has to be a lifelong journey, because if you're open to the newness of things, you're going to constantly be evolving. And I had this amazing conversation with this guy that I was interviewing, Keith Anthony Blanchard. And I asked him, I think it's one of the most amazing answers that I have gotten, honestly, about, I asked him who he was. And he says, I am becoming. And I'm like, oh, I am becoming. Amazing. That was so powerful and so beautiful, because it's like we are constantly becoming. So even with this conversation, Carol's going to say something, John is going to say something, and it's going to shift my perspective. And I'm going to be like, wow, I'm going to look at that thing differently. I'm going to look at soul differently. I'm going to look at connecting with myself differently. And so again, like, date yourself and make that a long-term committed relationship.
That's such a good analogy. But Jonathan, Carol, like, you were talking about, like, the negative things within yourself that are hard to, at one point I was told, it was really funny, by one of my telethoughts, or one of my friends without bodies, because I was a nurse for so long. I have more people who are friends without bodies than with bodies now. But they told me, whenever I get into a place where I want to beat myself up because I did something really dopey, they said, sit yourself in front of yourself, as though you were your own best friend, or as though you were the mother of the child that you were at that time, and begin to bring yourself up again. Say to that person what you would want somebody to have said to you. And in that, you can bring yourself up again. You can redo any wounds. You don't even have to name the wounds. All you have to do is look at how you judge yourself, and then talk to yourself the way you would someone you love dearly. Give them the advice that you would give them if they were your own child. And with that, sometimes I've come up with concepts that I didn't even know I had. So, and it heals. It heals if you treat yourself the way you would treat another that you love,
Yeah, and if you take what both of you were saying, I think that's one of the most powerful things, is to speak to yourself as a friend. And you can picture, like you said, a friend. And Carol B., what you were saying with sitting in silence to get to know yourself. And you can also from there then go to, as if you're dating yourself, right? Date yourself. Ask questions of yourself that you want to date, that you would ask someone who you want to date. And, get past the what's your favorite ice cream, what's your favorite colors. But the stuff you really want to know about somebody that you want to have a relationship with, can you have the courage to ask yourself, and then the courage to actually answer them honestly? And really because we hide those up. People ask us, and we have the rote answers. Let's hide behind these answers. But can you really be honest with yourself? Answer your questions. Date yourself. The same questions you ask anybody else that you really want to know. Get truthful with yourself. I love that idea of dating yourself. Date yourself, and then treat yourself like the person you want to be treated by. Don't wait for your romantic partner to treat you a certain way. Treat yourself that way. Connect with yourself that way. You want a nice dinner? Make yourself a nice dinner. Yeah. But don't just make yourself a nice dinner. Like, make yourself a nice dinner with all the excitement that goes around it. I'm going to celebrate this. Put candles on the table, the nice tablecloth. Do it for real. Take the nice bath. Don't go to the spa now, maybe, unless it's been sanitized. But you get to do these things. You get to treat yourself like your best friend. You get to date yourself and treat yourself the way you would want to be treated by this other person. It starts with you, and that's the way you really connect with yourself.
And the questions that you ask yourself while you're dating yourself, you may not like the answers, and that's okay. Because, like, when I said, like, spiritual being having a human experience here on this earth, it's just allow yourself to be able to experience all those different emotions. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you are not your thoughts, you are not your body, you're more than. So, like, even when, like, say for instance, like, okay, I'm dating myself, like, oh my God, you're an idiot, right? And it's like, okay, am I really an idiot? You know what I mean? Okay, no, actually, that's not an idiot. I actually was programmed to believe I was an idiot because I keep on comparing myself to A, B, and C person. You know what I mean? Oh, you know what? I am actually really funny. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I am funny because of A, B, and C. So you're going to have so many different questions, and, just don't judge what comes up. Just embrace it. And if there's a certain thing that comes all the time that's really a negative thing, don't even look at it negative, whatever, it feels bad, but further investigate. Like, why do I feel that I am not good enough? Is it because of something in the past somebody said to you? You know what I mean? Just kind of sit and marinate in that. And then I'll say, okay, if I don't think that I'm good enough, then what can I do to make myself feel good enough? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think this is where the two of you, my hands are like this because one of you is down here and one of you here on my screen. It's amazing what we do. But
yeah.
this is where it really combines, right? So date yourself. Ask
Yeah.
yourself the questions. And then when you get home and go, well, that was a crappy date. The
Yeah.
answers were horrible. Then you go to Carol G's idea and sit with yourself and be kind. Now talk to your friend. So
Yeah.
date yourself. Crappy date. You don't like the answers. Be your best friend.
Yeah.
And heal.
The other thing was that sometimes the things you'll find out are very surprising. That's part of the adventure. Like the other day I was meditating or something and I was sitting with myself, breathing and the whole bit. And I was trying to unearth, I heard somebody ask a question. I was trying to unearth if I had shame around anything. And I kept thinking, oh no, man, you can't live this long and not have investigated yourself a little bit, and lived with enough dying people, to take a good look. And I was looking and looking and looking, and suddenly it popped up like such a surprise. It was like one of those funny bounce up things. And it said joy. And I said, I have shame around joy. Why? This is what I do. I talk to my spirits like I talk to my friend. Why would I work my ass off? Why would I have any shame around joy? And they said, with all the people who are suffering, how can you feel joy? And then one of my other spirits came in and said, you see why we need a new narrative? And so I thought, oh, right, we need a new creation story, or we need to move on to a creation story that allows us to feel kindness, compassion, and everything for everyone as well as ourselves, but also to know that there's more. And that evolution involves being able to feel joy and know we're not taking anything away from anybody else. To understand that we don't have to live with the ideas of scarcity, greed, corruption, that we can help change the world to something better just by owning our own aspects of self.
Yeah. And also just to put out, for the people that are listening and watching, that, since there is a duality that exists in the world, the light and darkness, the good, the bad, with this negativity or these thoughts that don't feel good, they're never going to stop coming, to be honest, they're never going to stop coming, because when you reach new levels of success or new levels of being, there's going to be some other things to kind of like, your ego is just going to want to pull you down, you know what I mean, to that way of that you were before, but you want to push forward and propel. So essentially, with this time and connection with yourself, talking to yourself, dating yourself, and all this other stuff, you let that higher voice be the more predominant one. And then, you're going to be able to quiet that egoic aspect of yourself. However, this higher connection with yourself, that needs to be the habit and the muscle that you build. So yeah.
And I just want to add, if it's not the predominant voice right now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Practice using it. Practice talking to it. Practice dating yourself. Practice treating yourself as your best friend, so that you can connect build that muscle so that you can connect to those higher voices. And eventually, you know, when I started, man, I don't know if there was a higher voice. I guess it was that intuition, the gut feeling, and I just ignored it all the time because I was programmed to ignore it, listen to somebody else. But those other voices, man, they were loud, 100%. And then slowly it was, you know, 99% of the negative voices, and there was 1%, like, okay. And then, you know, slowly, okay, 50-50. And then, but over the years, right? I can say it here in this, you know, this half hour, 45-minute gathering we're doing here. And it sounds like, man, he just did this shift. No, I started practicing yoga 20 years ago. And then I understood, I learned about my life purpose, maybe 12 years ago. So, and I started the idea of self-love. I came across that. It was just either before or after I moved to Texas. So that means 6 years ago. So there's a journey that goes on here, and you have to allow patience for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You have to allow yourself to take the journey without beating yourself up that you're not there, that you're not where Carol is, and you're not where Carol is, and you're not where Jonathan is. You know, it'd be like me, you know, comparing myself to all those, you know, to Pema Chodron or Tara Brach or any of these people who've been practicing for you know, decades longer than I have. Well, it's not useful. It's not useful. So you have your own journey. If you're not talking to that higher self yet, you're okay. Practice. Go to the gym, build the muscle, like Carol said, and start the work, because it's important work. And where you are right now is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, Jonathan. That is beautiful, because that's the number one thing. Patience. Things are not going to happen overnight, and you have to really be patient in your whole growth process, you know, so that is really key. And then another amazing thing that you said too, Jonathan, is, you know, the comparison, you know what I mean, with yourself and others. That is a very dangerous place to put yourself, because you're going to always be measuring up, and that is actually the cause of not feeling that you're worthy enough, because you're chasing someone else's ideals, someone else's success. So, you know, just be right with yourself and where you are today. And this awareness that, you know, we're all this goodness that, you know, Carol G and I and Jonathan are that can be the start, and that thing that propels you. Because I always truly believe it only takes that 2 millimeter shift to kind of propel you in the right direction and propel you forward. So something that Jonathan says, something that Carol G says, or something that I says can be that very shift. So just, yeah, be kind to yourself in that whole development process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I remember, Jonathan, you said last week that we should look in the mirror and choose something in our body and stuff like that, you know?
As you go to this.
Yeah, and I'm looking, I'm thinking, oh God. And that's because I spend so much time inside, you know, who ever noticed? Let me tell you, you always have to decide what's yourself. Don't let anybody else define it for you. When I had lung cancer, when I had the stroke, when I had all this, I had to go through, is this a gift or a tragedy? I don't know what this is just yet. And if every experience you have, if you look at it as though it can make you more, if you go at it with the idea of, wow, sure teaches you humility, teaches you how to receive, teaches you a lot of things that you could not imagine that you didn't have a clue about, by the way. And that's another thing that helps you drop judgment. And like Carol says, take a few breaths, you know, and sit with your breath for a while. You'd be so surprised what you find out, you know. A lot of it is just thought. And as Jack Cornfield used to say, or something, whenever, that the reason they give you a mantra, and when you talk to a great guru, it's like the mahout riding an elephant. And what happens is, if you give the elephant a stick as he's walking through the market, then he doesn't pick up everything off everybody's cart. So if you use a word that has no meaning to you, it's like giving your mind a stick so that it can't pick up all those other thoughts. And if you keep repeating it over and over again, what happens is something will come through, whether it's pictures or your gut feeling or whatever, but it's a way to get away from your thought, or look at how many thoughts you have like a crazy monkey. And after a while, you'll just say, oh, those are just thoughts. That's not, you don't have to listen to that critic in the same way. You don't have to be afraid in the same way.
Something is coming up, and I think yeah. So essentially what's coming up is like, you know, for anyone who's watching and listening and you have something detrimental happening to your life, or what you term as a negative experience, right? So essentially what's coming up is saying that whenever you have certain experiences or scenarios like that in your life, ask yourself, what is good about this experiences? What is good about this experience that I'm not seeing? And when you do that, you're reacting to that experience in a different manner than you would before. And it will uncover for you maybe other resourceful things that are more resonant with you, instead of kind of reverting back into that deeper negativity hole. So that just came up to mention. So I don't know if it's for one particular person who's watching or for a couple of you, but yeah, that just came up.
No, I think that's a good point, because for years everybody told me, slow down, slow down, slow down. And I just kept plowing through, because, you know, on a path of enlightenment, you sometimes forget your body. Well, this was a, hey, you're down here doing a human experience. What did they get me to do? They took my legs. They didn't make me drool. You know, it took me 2.5 years to learn to walk again, and to really appreciate the fact that walking from one room to another didn't make me less, still got me there. It was slower. And on that way, I was able to see more things, appreciate more things. You know, there's a lot we miss when we take it all for granted, you know? So
I think it's how you show up to things. I remember when this whole pandemic was just starting out. And for me, we have a yoga center here. So it was difficult. You know, we shut down one day, and an hour and a half later we were online, and there was a lot that had to go in to actually making it happen, and then work with the other teachers. You know, and of course, you know, our son then wasn't in school, and he's 5 years old. So now he's at home, and we're doing all this. And this voice in my head said, you know, this is a test. And then this other voice said, this is an opportunity. And then I sat there and go, okay, and then I said, oh, I get to choose. I get to stop here and I get to choose. Is this a test? And if I treat it as a test, then it will be a test. Tests are kind of hard, and you got to study for them, and you're scared before them. And there's always this anxiety before a test, or while you're taking the test, and how long do I have for the test? All of this stuff. Or I could go, okay, this is an opportunity. And then I could go, oh, well, then I can just kind of relax. And it doesn't mean it's easy and there aren't difficulties, but I can watch these difficulties unfold and wonder, look, keep an eye out for what the opportunity is. Well, one of them is the three of us are together, because this probably wouldn't have happened, at least in this way, without this pandemic, certainly not Souldemic. And so, and there, you know, I could go on with other opportunities that have arisen. So how do you want to show up? And there are problems that you're going to face all the time. When this is over, guess what? More problems are coming. So you just get to go. Is this a test, or is this an opportunity? And whichever question you to ask, they both can be right. You just get to pick which question you follow. And that's the real choice to be made.
Yes. Yeah. And in addition to that, you know, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, you know, so it's up to you whether or not you want to recur and have that suffering record play over and over again. But like, as Jonathan said, everything is a choice. You can take that record out and play a new tune, you know?
Yeah. A lot of things are about reframes.
Yeah.
So I think now's a good time. It feels like a culmination here. So let's go to final words. Any final words that you might want to share? Carol G.
Oh, I would just say, hey, love yourself. I love you, love yourselves. It's time that we all started to look at each other and say, wow, you know, you're doing a good job. Life is tough. And you shouldn't feel less worthwhile every time it gets tougher, you know. Whoever it is, whatever source, creative, put us here to have the human experience, as Carol says. They had great hope for us too. The same as every parent has great hope for a kid. You know, Let's go, let's make mistakes. Let's get ourselves to our edges, because once we get ourselves to our edges, then we know where we can jump off. Often we think we're going to fall when we're going to fly. So let's do that. Let's make some mistakes.
Mm.
I love that. All right, Carol B.
Yeah, the only thing that's really coming up is that, you know, even though we have really see who's watching and who's tuning in, it's all I just want to say is I love you. I love you all. And, you know, I always end off whatever I'm doing with kind of to treat others with love, kindness, and compassion, but also, you know, turn that towards yourself in your journey. Don't be so hard on yourself. Be kind, loving, and compassionate, because, you know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. The only way is to kind of choose you, and you know, and then be able to kind of develop forward, not backward, you know, because when, you know, there's this amazing quote by one of my mentors, I love him, Tony Robbins. He says, when you are driving a vehicle, right, and you're driving a vehicle down the highway, and say you're always looking back in the rearview mirror, you know what I mean, you're bound to crash. You know what I mean? So again, it's like that kind of thing. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So let's just kind of move forward. Have more love, kindness, and compassion for yourself.
True.
And let me end with this. And it's really a repeat. If you take anything, date yourself, ask yourself the questions, and then be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to steal from both you, just love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You are loved already. There are people that love you.
Yes.
Now it's your turn. Connect to yourself, know yourself, and love both sides of yourself. The light, the dark. I shouldn't even say both, all sides of yourself. The light,
Right.
the dark,
Right.
and everything in between, everything you know, everything you don't know. You are loved. Now it's your turn. Love yourself.
Right.
Ooh, I love
Check
that.
us out. Check us all out on Souldemic. Things are going to be coming up. We don't know what it is yet.
There'll be more on the
There'll be
Facebook
more on
page,
some.
Souldemic. I think the website is coming, right? The website's coming.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to connect with us. You know, if you Google our names, you'll find us somewhere.
Yeah, we're all on Facebook and stuff
Yeah.
too.
Follow us, and
Yeah.
we will see you next week.
Yes.
Live, 11 o'clock.
Yes. Oh, I
Back
like
time.
it. See ya.